Welcome everyone to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and we are about to dive into the world of the MCU, or should I say the universe of the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that is. And we're going to discuss today about one of the most iconic comic book characters of all time, and that is none other than Captain America. And this is all in anticipation of the new Captain America film that will be released on February the 14th. Yes, Valentine's Day. Nothing screams love more loud than a comic book movie. A comic book movie that will have Captain America fighting the Red Hulk. So this ought to be interesting. But in anticipation of Marvel Studios' new release, their 35th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that's a lot of movies when you sit back and think about it. And it isn't like Marvel Studios has been around for 30 years. They've released 35 films in the span of, it's been less than 20 years. It's been about, what, 15 maybe? What was it? 08 when Iron Man came out, I think. I could be off, but either way, that's a short period of time to have 35 films, and not to mention the Disney Plus shows that have popped up over time, in the past couple of years that adds to the MCU. Not to mention, including Captain America Brave New World, there are two other MCU films that's coming out this year. So you're getting a grand total of 3 films coming out this year. And I think we're getting 4 TV shows. I know, and I know I'm going way off topic, but when my mind goes racing, is over. But I know there's Daredevil that comes out in March on Disney Plus. You have Eyes of Wakanda coming out later this year. You have Ironheart that's coming out later this year, and you're also gonna have Wonder Man that comes out later this year. Yeah, it is a lot of content, but a lot of that is because of the pandemic and the strikes that took place the last couple of years, and it just pushed everything back. Captain America Brave New World was supposed to come out like 2 years ago, but it kept getting pushed back. It went through extensive reshoots, almost pretty much reshot the whole movie, or at least half of it. Some characters were taken out, the new characters were put in. It was just a mess. I'm gonna say this, and we're gonna get back on topic. Captain America Brave New World, I'm excited for it for the simple fact I'm a fan of the MCU. I'm gonna go see it. I mean, I went to go see the Marvels, so I'm not, I'm not prude to the point where I'm not gonna go watch these films. I'm a fan of these characters, so I'm gonna go see it. But I'm not super excited like I was before. My excitement level kind of went down, once I started piecing all this stuff together. Now, I know for a lot of people who are not, into the behind the scenes making aspect of all this stuff, don't know nothing about what I'm talking about right now. They just want to go see a movie. That's fine. I get it, but I'm different. I know what all the reshoots and what all took place behind the scenes. They weren't too confident in it, and they reshot a lot of stuff and reshot the ending and added so much. It was just, whenever you do stuff like that, it can turn into a Frankenstein monster of a mess. So I'm a little concerned, but that's not going to stop me from going to see it. But in any event, Captain America, what stands out to me when it comes to Captain America is something personal. It is a real personal thing. I got into comics at a very young age. My oldest brother, he read comic books, and I used to read his comic books. Before I was old enough to wipe my own behind, I was still reading comic books, And the first comic book I ever picked, I'm pretty sure I've told this story on this show millions of times. But the first comic book that I ever picked up was a Captain America comic book. That's what introduced me to the world of comics. And it was a team up. It was Captain America and Wolverine teaming up to vanquish an enemy. But yeah, that's what got me hooked. And the first time I read it, from that moment on to this day, I'm still entrenched in these characters, in the comic books, in film, whatever media that they pop up in. And so there's a special place in my heart for Captain America. And uh that's why all of these films, I I I hold a special place in my heart for. Even the 1990 Captain America film that I know a lot of people probably never heard of, didn't even know that movie existed, but it does. And I said it holds a place in my heart. I didn't say it was good, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that when we run down the films. Now, this isn't your conventional movie goodness episode. We're not going to break down every movie because there are a few. Because not only am I going to talk about the Captain America films, but I'm going to talk about the films that Captain America appeared in. And so we have quite a few films that we're going to go over. And so I'm not going to go and break down every aspect of every film and grade them all and all this other stuff. Maybe one day when the opportunity arises, we will go over each and every film. As a matter of fact, if you go back in my archives, I think I did a 4th of July episode maybe 2 years ago. And that episode, I reviewed Captain America. I think it was Captain America First Avenger. So if you want to hear a review of that, you can go back and listen to that episode. But we're still going to talk about it today, just not going to do a conventional review. But before we get into the films, let's break down the character, what this character is, who this character is, in case you don't know. Captain America was created by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, and he appeared in American comic books published by Marvel Comics. The character first appeared in Captain America Comics #1, published on December the 20th, 1940 by Timely Comics. And to put that in perspective, my dad would have been 3 months old when that comic book came out. That's how long it's been. My dad was born in August of 1940. And so yeah. That's how old that this character is. And God rest his soul, my dad ain't around right now, so I can call him old. He won't get mad. But in any event, Steve Rogers, he is Captain America. And how the character is, he was a frail man, and that's putting it kindly. He was just bony little scrawny human being, and he was enhanced to peak human physical perfection by this experimental serum, this super soldier serum, after joining the army to aid his country in the Second World War. And so, equipped with an American flag inspired costume and this virtually indestructible shield, Captain America and his sidekick Bucky Barnes crashed frequently with the villainous Red Skull and other members of the Axis powers. What always intrigued me about Captain America was the fact that he's a human being. He wasn't bitten by a radioactive cockroach. He didn't fall into a vial of acid and came out sparkling new on the other side with these powers. He wasn't hit by a comet. He didn't, he didn't have superpowers like that. Yes, he took this serum, but all the serum does is enhance your ability, your physical ability. Nothing super about the abilities you get. It's called super soldier serum, but it's nothing super. You're not immortal. You're not bulletproof. It doesn't make you fly or stretch or have super speed, even though he can run fast. But like I said, all it does is bring you to the peak of human physical performance. He can run faster than any human. He can, uh, 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 he has a stronger metabolism. He can never get drunk. He can drink he can drink the whole bar and never get drunk because his metabolism goes so fast. Uh, he he's stronger because he can push himself, to pass the limit that we would do. And that's all it is. He can get shot and he'll die. He can get COVID and he'll die. It's nothing special about that. He's an average human there. And that's what always intrigued me when it came to Captain America. Because he was just normal. That's why, and I know we're talking about Captain America, but I gotta give props to my boy. Uh that's why I love Bruce Wayne, Batman, my favorite comic book character of all times. He's a normal human being. Now, he's to the peak of human performance, but he trained himself. He didn't take a serum. He trained himself to be to that point. But at the end of the day, he's just a human. There's nothing. There's no invulnerability. He's not immortal. And so that I guess that's why I gravitate to those characters. The same thing with Spider-Man. Spider-Man, he has those abilities. Yes, he can swing. Swing building to building. He has peak agility and climb walls and all this here, but he can still die. There's still a threat there, and I think that's why a lot of people, as much as Superman is a lot of people's favorite comic book character, understandably so, love soups, but he doesn't connect with a lot of people. One, he's an alien, and two, what can really stop him? Kryptonite, magic. That's about it. Don't you? If you don't have one or both of those things, it's Superman. He's the ultimate deterrent. There's nothing that can stop him unless you have a green rock or some magic tricks. So that's that's the thing with him. But with these human based characters, that just do extraordinary things, that's what's exciting to me. And now I'm not knocking anybody for liking other characters and stuff. I love all comic book characters, for all different reasons. So this isn't a knock. I'm just saying this is what I gravitate to personally. Anyways, you may ask yourself, well, Kevin, this character was set during World War II. How is he relevant in modern times? How did we get to this point? And I would say, well, that's a good question. Let me break it down. Uh, in the final days of World War II, after he had defeated Red Skull, there was an accident that left Captain America frozen in a state of suspended animation until he was revived in modern times. And so he resumed his exploits as the costume hero and became the leader of the superhero team, the Avengers, but frequently struggled as this man out of time thing, that trope. And it was hard for him to adjust to modern times or this new era, which is something that I wish they would have explored a little more in the films. They touched in on it, and I mean touched in on it. It wasn't really driven home that this is a man who was basically 80 years old, in a 20-something-year-old body, but he was out of time. It's like if you woke up one day and it was 2058 or something, and You got flying cars and all this other stuff. It's just futuristic. You'll be lost. You'll be so lost. I mean, heck, half the time I wake up now and I look around and I'm lost. So I can imagine in the future when they have all of these technology and crazy stuff that they're planning out here. Will it ever happen? I don't know. I thought we would have that by now. When I was a kid in school, I always I imagine we'll be in the Jetsons time right now, with the flying cars and all this other stuff. But not yet. Not yet. But yeah, he was frozen in time. But in any event, during the 1940s, the character became super popular because we was in the middle of a world war. And so the character was a commercial success, for wartime publications. Uh, the popularity of superheroes declined in the post-war period, and Captain America comics were discontinued in 1950. So after the war was over, people started, getting back to reality. During the war, he was trying to escape, because the world was in turmoil. So you needed an escape from the reality that was going on around you. A lot of people picked up a comic book, and that's how these characters became as popular as they were. But once the war was over and life had to go on, it started dwindling. At least the numbers started dwindling. So the characters saw a short-lived revival in 1953 before returning to comics in 1964, and has since remained in continuous publications from that date. Captain America's creation as an anti-Nazi figure was a deliberate political undertaking. Joe Simon and Jack Kirby were stridently opposed of the actions of Nazi Germany and supporters of the U.S. intervention in World War II. Having appeared in more than 10,000 stories in more than 5,000 media formats, Captain America is one of the most popular and recognized Marvel Comics characters and has been described as an icon of American pop culture. Though Captain America was not the first United States themed superhero, he will become the most popular and enduring of the many patriotic American superheroes created during World War II. Captain America was the first Marvel character to appear in a medium outside of comic books in the 1944 serial film Captain America. The character has subsequently appeared in a variety of films and other medias as well, including the Marvel Cinematic Universe, also known as the MCU, where he was portrayed by actor Chris Evans from the character's first appearance in Captain America, the First Avenger, which came out in 2011, to his final appearance in Avengers Endgame in 2019. Just to run down his abilities in case you don't know, as I mentioned before, he is enhanced to the peak of physical perfection by the super soldier serum. He is also a master of martial arts and hand-to-hand combat, as well as a master tactician and strategist. And he wields a virtually indestructible shield, which is now in the films is one thing, in the comics it's another thing. In the films it's vibranium, but in the comic books it's antimanium. Whatever Wolverine got in his skeleton, I can't get it out. But anyways, y'all know what I'm saying. But I think that's because of the rights thing when they started making the Captain America's films. Fox owned the rights to animanium, and so they couldn't use that. So they had to use vibranium, which is just as indestructible as that. But it is what it is. But now Disney owns Fox. Now they can use it. That's why we see that X-Men is coming and all this other good stuff. But in any event, yes, that's a little history of the character in the comics and a little introduction into Captain America in film, which all started in 1944. The serial film Captain America, which was a black and white 15 chapter serial film, and it was loosely based on the Marvel Comics character. I've never seen this. I'm not even gonna sit here and pretend that I've seen this. The one person that I do know who's seen this is passed on. Now that's my dad. He told me about this back in the day, but I never watched it. I think one day, just randomly, I was flicking through channels and I saw it on TCM, and it was like I caught it in the middle, and when I catch stuff in the middle, unless it's something that I really like and don't care, I will watch it. But if it's something I haven't seen before, I would keep going because I don't want to catch it in the middle. I want to see it from the beginning. And so I think I did see like 5 minutes of it, and I kept it pushing. But this is a serial. I'll say that much for them 5 minutes that I see, and I'm being nice with the 5 minutes. I don't think it was that long. Uh, but he wasn't Steve Rogers. The character was named Grant Garner, and he was portrayed in this film by Dick Parcell, and you know it was a 15-part serial. And in case you don't know what a serial is, it's it's like a TV show, but this back in the day, it was at the movies. You play a nickel to go in the theater, and like every week they'll play another one. The other part, and then you got to come back the next week for the other part. That would have drove me nuts. My dad he used to explain to me and tell me that's what he used to do. Every week he would go watch those serials, and every serial was left off with a cliffhanger because he told me about not only Captain America, he told me about the Shadow. Watching that serial, there was a Batman one, there was other ones, but he was into westerns and cowboy movies, so a lot of them were those too. But that was the form of entertainment back then. And so for all of us who complain now about, oh, we can't binge and all this here, imagine having to go to the theater, and every week you got to go every week to get the next story. It's not like you could have wait till it came out on digital back in 1953 or something. You literally had to wait. It's that week and go to the theater and pay. Interesting time. Wouldn't have been a problem for me because that's my fortress of solitude. I'll go sit in the theater all day if I could, and it's that's my comfort zone. But yeah, things have changed indeed. Now, what I do remember seeing was the 1979 made for TV movie films. I do remember those, and this is the courtesy of rerun, because I know what a lot of people would say. Well, Kevin, you was born in 1979. How did you watch this? And how you probably did, but how do you remember it? Well, I don't remember watching it in 1979 per se, but I do remember watching it all courtesy of reruns, and I did watch Captain America in 1979, and at the time it was the greatest thing on earth, because around this time, this is when CBS was I guess they were trying to build this MCU, if you will. They were trying to build this Marvel Cinematic Universe, because in, what was it, 1977, you had the Amazing Spider-Man. That same year, you had the Incredible Hulk. They had that Doctor Strange movie that came out in 78. It was like a Marvel Cinematic Universe. They were trying to build an Avengers team, around that time. Now, granted, around that time, I didn't know any better. because I didn't get into all this stuff until what, about 84, 83, 84, somewhere up in there. When well, I'll say this. I got serious about it around 84, 85, because I always did look at comics because of the pictures. that's what that's what intrigued me, was the pictures. And so I got serious about it, when I was about 5 or 6 or whatever, and started actually reading. And lo and behold, they showed reruns of the Captain America movies back then. I think it was two of them. They came out in 1979. I couldn't tell you what the order of them are, but they were what they were. They were TV movies from the 70s. There's nothing else I could say about this. Nothing. If you've seen the Incredible Hulk, if you've seen the Amazing Spider-Man, you know exactly what you was gonna get out of this movie, and that's what it was. It was nothing special about this movie. I think the second one was called Dead Too Soon or something like that. It was something silly, but in any event, uh, they were what they were for the time. They were what they were. One mad at it. One mad at it. Will I ever see him again? Probably not. But at least it wasn't as bad as the year 1990. Oh my God, people. This movie came from the Cannon Group. And if you know about late 80s, mid to the mid 90s, you know what the Cannon Group is. You know what type of movies they were putting out. All of those those little low budget action movies that were just that, straight to video, straight to blockbuster movies. And Captain America was no exception. This was so bad. I remember when this came out, and it was on HBO. And I'm like, wait, I don't remember this being advertised for being at the movies, or I don't remember this. I don't even recall it being released on at the video store, because I frequent the video store. The major video, Blockbuster Video, the little mom and pop video store that was around the corner from my house growing up, that we went to every week. Every week. When I got old enough, I was in there at least twice, not twice, but every other day, getting videos. Oh man, I wore that VCR out. I loved that we had access to all the movies and all those gems. That's what these young folk, yeah, I'm going on a tirade right quick. That's what these young folks are missing these days, man. Going to the video store and discovering these new movies, or different type of movies that you would never watch any other time. But you discovered them and fell in love with them. There's so many movies that I fell in love with just randomly picking them up from the video store, because they were out of the one I really wanted. The big release that everybody came and rented. And so I couldn't get it. So I had to go down the aisles and try to pick something, because I done came all the way to this video store. I'm leaving out of here with something, and just randomly pick up something, go home and watch it, and like, hey, this is good. But anyway, I went on all that rant just to say Captain America from the year 1990, I don't recall being released on video before I saw that on TV at all. But there it was on HBO, and wasn't in the theaters. And then as I got older and everything, come to find out, the reason you didn't see it in theaters, it was never released in theaters. It had a small release in theaters, but not in the United States, in the UK, in the United Kingdom, which is the most ironic thing you couldn't write this. You could not make a movie about this. A movie called Captain America was not released in America. It was released in the United Kingdom. You can't make this stuff up. But some of the takeaways from that movie was the fact that Red Skull was in it. He was the main villain. And my God, the makeup effect on Red Skull was so bad. It was just like they just painted this dude face red. You know, just shaved his head and just painted his whole face and head red. And I'm like, man, this looks like a horror movie. Now, I mean, and not in a good way. You know, we're going to see a little later on, or talk about a little later on, Hugo Reeves' portrayal as Red Skull. Night and day. Night and day. This was so bad of prosthetic work. I couldn't get past it. And then it felt like they just shot this movie on side of a mountain for 3 weeks, and that was the movie. It was like the action sequences wasn't, there was no act, it was just bad. This is the one film that God knows I will probably never watch again on earth. Sometimes I'll say that, but I give movies chances. After I gave it enough time away from it, saying let me revisit it with fresh eyes, and I might find something worth watching or enjoying. Not in this, not in this movie. Man, this was so bad. But hey, you have to also understand it was 1990, and studios did not take comic book films, comic book characters seriously. We really didn't get serious comic book movies until the late 90s when you got Blade. Once Blade popped up, that's when studios started saying, "Hey, we can actually do something with these characters." And I know a lot of people are screaming into their speakers, phones, or wherever it is you're listening to this. Hey, Batman, '89. Yeah, I get it. Just a year before this. Yeah, I know that. I know Superman from 1978. I get that. But I mean, really, think about it. Look at the year gaps that I just mentioned those movies, because those are the only two movies. That was it. Those are the gaps that we got. But once Blade got into the picture, then it started getting a little consistent. And this is where we are right now. We're getting about 5 or 6 comic book movies coming out this year. And I know MCU has 3. We getting Superman this year. I could have sworn there was another one. I could be off. But even if it isn't, we're talking 4. 4 superhero movies in one year. Who would have thunk it? And this is a slow year. And so yeah. In 1990, it really wasn't a serious thing. Nobody really uh was looking to make money, I guess. I don't know what the thinking was with these characters, but it was not a good look. And so due to that, we never seen a Captain America film, never heard of a Captain America film being put in production or in development or anything until 2011. And we finally got a proper Captain America film, courtesy of the good folks over at Marvel Studios, Captain America, the First Avenger. Um, this for a good 3 or 4 years after its release was my favorite superhero movie. Well, maybe not 3 or 4 years. I would say 2. Uh, yeah, 2 years. It was my favorite comic book movie. I absolutely loved Captain America, the First Avenger. And the reason being is because out of all the comic book slash superhero films to come out in the past before this was the most accurate comic book movie I've ever seen. It didn't deviate from the comics in no sense of the word. This was ripped straight from the comic books. You know, Iron Man was on that track. It did stick to the comics till the very end when Tony Stark said, "I'm Iron Man." That's where it went away from being the most accurate. But other than that, it was close. This was super close. And I know around that time, a lot of people didn't like that. A lot of people didn't like the fact that this movie didn't try anything else. They played it safe with the first Avenger. And I understand where those people coming from. I understand that this film comes off as being safe. It's, you know, they didn't take any chances. And you also have to understand, um, around this time, you're building up the MCU. The MCU isn't the MCU that we know right now. We're still building because right after this, the first Avengers film came out. I think the following year, and so they had a lot riding on this. This couldn't fail, so they had to really just stick it real close to the comics here. But I loved it. Now, my big problem with it before the film came out was the casting of Chris Evans. Not because I felt he was a bad actor, it's the fact that, wait, how are they going to cast Chris Evans? And we just seen him a couple of years ago. He was Johnny Storm. And you can say what you want about those Fantastic Four films. Now, they are bad. Don't get me wrong, they're bad. But he was good. He was perfect in it. We just saw him reprise that role in spoilers in Deadpool and Wolverine. He's still cool as Johnny Storm. And so I'm like, man, Steve Rogers, you gotta be how can I put this? I don't know how to I don't know how to put this kindly, to be honest with you. In order to be Steve Rogers, you have to have the biggest stick shoved clean up your behind. You have to be the greatest Boy Scout. I know they call Superman the biggest Boy Scout. No, Captain America is a Boy Scout. I mean, you have to be super clean, no cursing, no nothing out of you. Everything is by the book. He's a Christian. He is a stand-up guy. He's a loyal guy. He represents what America think it is. He's perfect. And it was just going to be hard. Going in, I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be hard to kind of not look at Chris Evans and not think of Johnny Storm. But all of that was gone once you see the movie. Once he appears on screen, it was like the switch came on. It was like pow. And he was Steve Rogers. And he was perfect. I mean, perfect as Steve Rogers. Nobody else could play that role. Nobody else can play that role. The dude is amazing in this role. Hugo Weaving as Red Skull was amazing. The fact that we never got Hugo Weaving back in the MCU is one of the greatest fails in Marvel, in my humble opinion. Marvel has done an excellent job. They got countless billion-dollar movies in this franchise, but it's very upsetting that Hugo Weaving only got one appearance as Red Skull in this movie. And for those of you who watched Infinity War and Endgame and saw Red Skull in that movie or in those movies, that was not Hugo Weaving. The dude that, took over for him did an excellent job. He did real good. Because the first time I saw it, I was like, oh man, they brought Hugo back. But once I found out that wasn't him, I'm like, really? But in any event, yeah, man, it would have been nice to see him return in some capacity, but we never got him back. But it was a great introduction to this character as far as introducing him into this new Marvel Cinematic Universe. Great job by Joe Johnson, who directed this film. Joe Johnson, who directed Jumanji, October Sky. Real good director. I really like Joe Johnson. He also did Jurassic Park 3, which a lot of people hate. I didn't hate Jurassic Park 3. I thought Jurassic Park 3 was pretty good. Was it as good as the first one? No. Was it even as good as the second one? No. It was Jurassic Park 3. It was the third best in my opinion. But it was all right, you know. Uh, but he did a really good job with this. I deeply enjoyed uh Captain America, the first Avenger. 1 year later, in 2012, we got The Avengers, a film that starred Robert Downey Jr. reprising his role as Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, Mark Ruffalo taking over for Edward Norton as Bruce Banner, the Hulk. You also have Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, um, Chris Hemsworth as Thor. You also had Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye and Chris Evans as Captain America as they team up to take on Loki, who is portrayed by Tom Hiddleston. This was a film that was, it feel like hundreds of years in the making. Something that I never thought in my wildest dreams, growing up reading these comic books, dreaming and picturing seeing this in live action. Never thought that I would actually see it in live action. Never pictured this ever happening. And it did. And this film was directed by Josh Whedon. An amazing feat. Something so monumental with the release of this film that every studio tried to replicate it. And all of them crashed and burned. DC tried it. They rushed through Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and went straight into Justice League, and it crashed and burned. The Monster Universe at Universal, they tried to rush into this crossover cinematic universe and crashed and burned. And it was so many other attempts to try to get things going at other studios to compete with Marvel, because it was amazing that this small studio that took a chance to make these films, but what was missing from those other studios who were trying to do it was the characters, was the fact that all of these characters, before this movie came out, we knew who these characters were. We knew what led them up to this point. We followed Iron Man, I think, in 2 movies up to this point. We followed Thor. We followed Black Widow, Nick Fury, and the Hulk, and Captain America. We followed these characters, and to see them come together in this giant crossover was the biggest payoff of all time. And kudos to everybody involved with this film. This was an achievement. Now, you know, as time has gone on, you know, the movie, I'm not going to say it diminishes, but, or dated or anything like that, but is not as great as I remember. I think it was more of the adrenaline and the excitement up to this point in 2012, why it was so beloved. It's still an awesome movie. It was awesome. One of the greatest scenes of all time was Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner arriving at the scene, and Captain America tells Bruce Banner, like, you know, now's a good time to get angry. And Bruce Banner turns to him and said, "That's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry." And he turns back around. As he's turning mid-turn, he starts to transform into the Hulk and boom, punches that Leviathan. It was awesome. That was one of the greatest scenes in movie history, in my humble opinion. But yes, this was great. And Chris Evans, as Captain America, being the leader of these superheroes who, you know, all of them are not used to teaming up. Everybody is used to being on their own, doing their own thing, and you know, not having to deal with a team or looking out for another team or setting up somebody else to take out this enemy. It was always on them, but now they have to work together. And Steve Rogers was the one to draw them together, to lead them, to use his strategy and and defeat Loki at the end. Awesome movie. Absolutely loved Steve Rogers in this movie. I loved him more in here in the Avengers than I did in his own movie, and that's saying something. But we fast forward to 2014, and I would say probably up to this point was Marvel's biggest swing, if I'm not mistaken. When did Guardians of the Galaxy come out? Because that's the biggest swing. They put all their eggs in that basket, and they won. But it was a swing. But this was a swing too, and it was Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This wasn't your conventional comic book film. This was not Captain America: The First Avenger sequel. This wasn't even a set in the same tone of an Avengers film. This was a different film, and I absolutely loved it. For a long time, for a long time, this was my favorite MCU film, hands down. It wasn't even a discussion. To be honest with you, if I sit down and think about it, it's probably still up there. It's probably still there. Definitely top three. That I can put money on. It is definitely top three. Uh, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, not a you know balls to the wall action thriller. No, this was a political spy thriller. This was like a 70s spy thriller. That was the tone of The Winter Soldier. We see the return of Bucky Barnes, played by Sebastian Stan, in this film, and he reprised his role from the first film. If you don't know the history of that character, uh, when they go on a mission, Bucky gets lost. He gets essentially killed in the mission, at least so we thought. And come to find out that he was captured by, I believe, Russians or whatever, and he was brainwashed into this assassin called the Winter Soldier. And so that's where that character stems from. But man, this movie was so fire, so fire. This film was directed by the Russo brothers, who has made the best MCU films, and I'm not speaking in hyperbole. I mean, they made Winter Soldier, uh, Captain America: Civil War, Infinity War, Endgame, and they're about to direct the future Avengers films with Doomsday and Secret Wars. So yeah, they are Marvel royalty, and it all started right here with the Winter Soldier. What a film! Uh, the dynamic between Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes here. This is where we get the real crust of their relationship. We did get a taste of it in the first Avenger, but their relationship in this film, and why Steve Rogers feel the way he feel, that's his best friend. He loves him. He's like a brother, and he won't believe that he's a brainwashed assassin. He feels he can save him. That's the thing with Steve Rogers. He feels that there's always a chance. There's always a way that he can save his friends or whatever. And sometimes it works out, and sometimes maybe it doesn't. But it's he really really tried, and this stretched on for a good while in the films. But the the way this movie plays out, you have so many twists and turns and red herrings that take place. You got Robert Redford in this movie as the villain. Come on, man. Come on, Butch Cassidy, or was he the Sundance Kid? I can't remember which one he was. But anyways, you got him in this thing. It man, this was fire. You got Nick Fury faking his own death. You got Nick Fury taking his eye patch off, and come to find out that his deformed eye is the secret little code or whatever that he could scan his eye to get access to things. It's like all type of stuff. The assassination attempt on Nick Fury, the hand to hand combat between Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes on that street. Awesome. The first time I saw Captain America throw his shield at the Winter Soldier and he caught it with that steel arm of his, it was like, wow, you're in trouble, Steve. You're in trouble. But yeah, it was cool. I still regard it as one of my favorite MCU films. Like I said, definitely in my top three. Loved Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and I read something somewhere that they're comparing Captain America: A Brave New World to The Winter Soldier. Pump your brakes. Pump your brakes. Let's not go crazy. It could be. I hope it's that good. But that's a steep climb, very steep. You're putting too much pressure on that team. But anyways, we moving on to the next appearance of Captain America in film, and it was the next year in 2015 with Avengers: Age of Ultron. And once again, you have Josh Whedon returning to direct this Avengers film. Everybody from the other film, plus about 50 other more characters, uh, including Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, aka Captain America. This is the one Avengers film that was not my favorite. I don't know. It was something about Age of Ultron that I had some major high hopes for, and it let me down on so much, so much. Uh, you got Wakanda in this movie, and we don't get a mention of T'Chaka. You don't get a mention of nothing. You do see Claw, but it's like, huh? It's like you're in Wakanda, and the Wakanda that we see in this movie looks nothing like the Wakanda that we got to see in Black Panther and the other Avengers film. It was like they just decided to do something. Like okay, let's go here and call it Wakanda. It was frustrating, but I just didn't like how they set that up. The character of Ultron. Ultron in the comics is vicious, man. He is a beast. That's why I was super excited for this. I thought this was going to be a very dark Avengers film because Ultron goes dark in the comics. He is one of their biggest foes and continues to be in comics if they do it right. Then you have James Spader as Ultron. I'm like, man, this is going to be gangster. And it wasn't. They had him a little too comedic for me. Uh, it wasn't James Spader. I liked his character. I liked him. Uh, uh, I should say playing this character. It's just what was given to him. Very comedic. When he didn't have to be, and it took away from the film. Uh, Not just him, but throughout the screenplay, the characters they tried to be too funny when this could have been dark because the tone was dark. It was very dark tones throughout this film. This is the film we got introduced to Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver and all this here. We see Quicksilver die in this movie. I mean, there was a lot of dark stuff that happened in this movie, and they went into a joke, right after or even during. It was just unnecessary. And the whole basis of this film was to set up every other film going forward after. They did not focus on Ultron. They focused on what was coming. Thanos is coming and Ragnarok is coming and all these other things. This Black Widow with the Red Room and all this other stuff. Like, what about the problem at hand here? When are we gonna focus on that? But you know, it was what it was. It like I said, wasn't horrible, but it's definitely not my favorite Avenger film. It's actually my least favorite Avengers film, to put it kindly. Uh, Chris Evans was fine. Captain America was fine. Like I said, all the characters were fine. It just is a far cry from what we got with the first Avengers film. So, moving on to our next appearance of the character of Captain America, and this is, if I can get it out, this is Captain America: Civil War, which came out in 2016. This is another film that is directed by the Russo brothers, starring Chris Evans as Cap, and you also have Iron Man in this film. Robert Downey Jr. reprising his role. I was super excited for this. Once again, read the comic, read the Civil War comic. I knew this couldn't be a straight up adaptation of that comic because they don't have all the characters. Because in the comic books, the X-Men are involved, the Illuminati is involved, Fantastic Four is involved. I mean, all superheroes on all spectrums were involved in Civil War in the comic books. And so I knew that it wasn't going to be a direct adaptation. But I was excited to see exactly what we're going to get here, because with you being handcuffed with the characters that you do have, how are you going to tell this vast story that Civil War is in the comics? This is the film that we get introduced into the MCU. Black Panther, played by the late great Chadwick Boseman, and Spider-Man into the MCU, played by Tom Holland. What a get. What a shocker and surprise, even though we all knew going in that these two characters were in it, but it was just a shock and surprise that we've gotten to this point. We have lived long enough to see a movie where there's Iron Man, Captain America, Black Panther, Spider-Man, Ant-Man, all in one movie. you know, it is crazy. This movie has been described as Avengers 2.5 because it's basically an Avengers movie, because there are so many characters in it. But I would say this is what's so impressive about Captain America Civil War. It's called Captain America Civil War, so that tells you it's a Captain America movie. But with so many characters, there's no way this is a Captain America movie. I beg to differ. This is truly a Captain America movie. It focuses on Captain America. Everything that happens is because of Steve Rogers' decision not to sign the Accords, and the fallout behind that, the aftermath of all that, and the rift that it causes the Avengers, the that tears them apart, and the villain that we have in this film, even though it is the most far-fetched, ridiculous plot that you could ever have a villain execute. It doesn't make a lick of sense, and it would never work on your best day. Whatever the plan that he had put together. But it's movies. You got to suspend disbelief and just watch the movie for what it is. But it was so silly. But I did truly enjoy Captain America Civil War. It is a fun time, exciting time. The airport battle was at the time one of the best choreographed fight or superhero fight sequences you would see, until we later on when we get to end game. But it was so cool. It was so cool to see these two friends. But the one thing that always sticks out to me in this film was the scene at the end when Tony Stark, a human being, a normal human being, yes, he's in an iron suit. He's in a suit of armor. I get all that. Tony Stark took on not one, but two super soldiers at the same time and held his own. Tony Stark is a beast. I don't care what nobody says. Tony Stark is a beast. Just think back, and I know I'm jumping ahead, but just think. And I know this is a Captain America show, but I gotta give props where props is due. Just think about the in Avengers. Was it? Yes, it was Infinity War. No, yes, it was Infinity War when he took on Thanos. We saw Thanos in two films. We never saw Thanos take blood. We saw him take punches from Captain Marvel. We even saw him take punches from the Hulk. We have saw him take blasters, all type of defenses. And he took them. Not one shed. Not I don't think he sweat, let alone blood. Tony Stark cut his cheek. Tony Stark drew blood from Thanos. I'm telling you, bro. That's why I cried at the end of Endgame. Because Tony Stark is a beast. But anywho, and it can't take away from Cap either. Cap was able to hold back Thanos for a short while. He was able to hold him back for a minute. But yeah, man. I going back to Civil War, I enjoyed Civil War. Really good film. Uh it completed that trilogy. And as we come to the end to that trilogy, I just want to say, can you think of a better trilogy than Captain America? Captain America had probably the greatest trilogy of all time. And I know that's blasphemous for a lot of people that want to talk about the original Star Wars trilogy. I understand that. The Lethal Weapon trilogy, the Black Back to the Future trilogy, and the Jurassic Park trilogy, and Indiana Jones, and all that. I get all that. But all those other ones have a shaky one in between there. Like Back to the Future, Back to the Part 3. Well, no, not Part 3. Part 2 was pretty much copy and paste from the first one. And so I can't, and I like the second one, but it just didn't feel right there. And Part 3, I never was a big fan of Part 3. But I think Part 1 is probably the perfect movie. But I like the trilogy. I'll sit down and watch all three back to back to back. Um, the Indiana Jones trilogy, you know, Temple of Doom has its problems. So there's that. There are some hiccups here and there, but when it comes to Captain America, not too many hiccups there. I really love that trilogy. I think it's one of the best. Moving on to the final two appearances of Steve Rogers as Captain America. The first one, Avengers Infinity War, which came out in 2018. This movie I didn't see coming. Honest to God. I knew everything that happened in the comics, but I didn't think they had the cojones to do this on film. I did not think that they were actually going to snap at the end of this movie. And Thanos snapped at the end of this movie. Blew my mind. You had Josh Brolin portraying Thanos in this movie, making him one of the coldest villains in comic book history, or at least in comic book movie history. Really good portrayal of that character, to the point where a lot of people question, was Thanos right? Was that especially now? Think of all the stuff that has happened after Infinity War, after the snap. Just imagine if that was real. And we wouldn't have had to deal with COVID. We wouldn't have to deal with all of these gas prices and uh, food prices, grocery prices, all this other stuff, everything that's going wrong, these national disasters and all this other stuff. Maybe Thanos was right. These wars and all this other. I mean, my God, it's just been crazy for the past 6 years. So he could have been on to something. That's all I'm saying. But in any event, it was an awesome portrayal of a villain. I put him second behind Killmonger, and you know, I'll fight you on that. That is Killmonger is probably the best villain in the MCU. But anywho's, this film once again, this is probably the only time, and it's just in this one. This is the one film where I didn't care for Captain America. This is the one film where I was like, I just don't like Cap in this movie. And it's weird. I love the movie and I love all of the characters. I like the screenplay. Everything about this worked. Even Cap, I just didn't like the way. I didn't like the way they set him up. It was such a departure of the character that I know and love, and I know in the comics that he does go down this road as Nomad, the man with no nation. I know that. I but I just didn't like it. I didn't care for it. Number one, they didn't commit to it. It wasn't a, this is where I am. This is what I am going forward. It only lasted a little while, and I just didn't like it. But I would love to have seen another movie, maybe fit in between there, before we got to this point where we could have flushed out the Nomad character. But it is what it is. I don't own a time machine, so uh, we're stuck with what we got. But this was the only film in the MCU that Captain America appeared in that I did not like Captain America in. And so it wasn't long, due to the snap. He was still around. The snap didn't affect him, so we got to see him again the following year in 2019 in his final appearance, Avengers Endgame. This is his crowning moment. And this is not just him, multiple characters, of course. It's called Endgame. But since we're talking about Captain America, we're just going to focus on Captain America. I can go through multiple scenes in this movie where Cap, uh, just stole the film. It's supposed to be Avengers, but it turned into a Captain America movie almost. He was that prominent of a character. But I'm just going to go to the end of this movie. And now going into this movie, it was a lot of speculation as to who's going to die, who's going to make the ultimate sacrifice to reverse the snap, to defeat Thanos. And didn't have a poll in front of me. Don't have one in front of me now, but I think maybe 80% of the people who've been following these films from the beginning said Cap. And a lot of that, excuse me, a lot of that was because of the promotion, the trailers and all that was coming out before the film, where we saw Cap bleeding and tightening up the shield and all this other stuff. And you're like, man, Cap gonna die, and I was anticipating that, and I didn't want it to happen, of course. And part of me thought it would be Iron Man too. I thought it would be Tony, and I ended up being right on that. A lot of people did, but still wasn't ready for it. But that scene when Cap, the half of the shield is broke, he's bleeding, his arm is cut open, and he tightens up the shield on his arm, and he uses it as a, what they call that, a tourniquet, and he pulls it tight because he's about to go fight him again. And this is with Thanos and his armies coming. and he was gonna face him on his own. He's limping towards him, and I'm like, that's Cap. That's Captain America. That is, he don't care. He know he's gonna die. He doesn't care. But he's going down fighting, bruh. Let me tell you something. I teared up because I knew he was about to die. The tears went to falling as he was walking, and you heard it over his intercom. To your left, Cap. To your left, and all of a sudden, I was like, "Oh my God!" And you see the portals open up. You see T'Challa. You see Shuri. You see Okoye. Then you see Falcon fly out. Then you see all the other portals open up, and the whole MCU came and stood on business. And at that time, Cap called for Thor's hammer. He caught it, and after all these years, after 20 something movies, we finally get the line from Captain America: Avengers assemble. The movie could have went to dark, and I honestly, at that point, I thought the movie was going to cut to black. I was like, man, I'm good. I'm good. I really thought it was going to cut to black right there. I don't need to see no more. I've seen all I needed to see. Everything else after this is lanyard. And what did they do? They kept rolling the cameras. They kept shooting, and it just ripped my heart out with the epic fights that we saw, the team ups that we saw. Do you realize we saw a movie in live action? We saw Spider-Man hitch a ride on Thor's hammer while carrying the Infinity Gauntlet. No way, no way did I thought I would see that in my life. No way did I think I would see so many comic book characters in one scene. In one scene, you saw every character in Marvel, that was available to him at the time, outside of the X-Men and all that stuff. Man, it was amazing. And now this movie wasn't flawless. I gotta point this out because it aggravates me to no end. I understand why they did this. I get it. I get that. But it was so stupid. It was, common sense. Common sense wise. The scene with what they call them, the A Force or whatever, with the ladies. When you had Captain Marvel, Scarlet Witch, Okoye, well, not Black Widow because she died, but all of the female superheroes, Valkyrie, Pepper Potts in her Iron Woman suit or whatever. What's her name? Rescue. You had all of those characters, and it was the big woman movement. Their moment. I get it. I get it. But the reasoning for it was the stupidest reason I have ever seen. It, and I just cannot get past it. All of the women showed up. Well, the reason, okay, this is what happened. Peter Parker, Spider-Man, he has the Infinity Gauntlet. He hands it over to Captain Marvel. And Peter tells him, I can't remember the word, but I'm paraphrasing. Oh, you're going to need some help to get through there, all those whatevers. You're going to need some help. And that's when all the women show up. Oh, she's not by herself. We'll make sure she gets through. This is Captain Marvel. If anybody, number one, she can fly. That's number one. Number two, if anybody's powerful or strong enough to get through that army, it's Captain Marvel. She is the walking deterrent to everything. She's the most powerful being in Marvel. Literally, that's why her name is Captain Marvel. She didn't need help, but I understand. I get it. They needed that woman power moment. I got you. That's fine. I'm glad that they had. Honestly, I'm glad that they had it. I just didn't like the The setup for it didn't make sense to me. It just didn't get there for me. But anyways, they defeat Thanos. Tony Stark dies. He sacrifices himself, and all is well and good. But at the end of this movie, uh, Steve Rogers volunteers to go put the stones back to where they were, so that it doesn't disrupt the time, whatever timelines. And we get an old Steve Rogers who, at that time, passes the shield to Sam Wilson and pretty much hand over the mantle as Captain America. And in between all that, and that was the end of Steve Rogers, as far as we know, in the MCU. Now, that leads us into Captain America: Brave New World. But between that, you got Falcon and the Winter Soldier that was on Disney Plus. Now, that show leads it really explains a lot about what's happening in this new film coming out. Now, if you didn't see that show, I'm gonna tell you now, you're probably gonna be lost because there's a lot of stuff that I saw in the trailer for Captain America: Brave New World that was on that show. And I know a lot. And when I say a lot, 90% of the people who I know watch MCU movies or into all this stuff, they have never seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So they're most likely going to be lost when they go see that film. And that was part of the thing that I was scared of when they started putting out these Disney Plus shows. You know, will it affect a lot of people's movie going experience? You know, like with Scarlet Witch being a part of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. There are some elements from WandaVision that play a part in Doctor Strange. Not really. You can get away with that. You can get away with that, but not so much with this. Same thing with Thunderbolts. If you didn't watch what was that show? Oh my god, why am I blanking? Oh, I'm an idiot. uh Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There's some characters that were introduced in Falcon and the Winter Soldier that's a part of the Thunderbolts. And you're probably gonna go see the Thunderbolts and be like, who is he? Or why is he here? Or it's gonna be confusing to a lot of people. And so I hope that a lot of people get caught up before they go check out these movies, so they won't sit there in the theater like, who that is. Mainly because I want to sit in the theater and watch the movie and not have to hear people talk and try to explain who such and such is and why such and such is acting like this, or where why are we at this point of the MCU and how did we get to this point and all this other, all the explanations that take place while the movie's going on. Hopefully you get caught up beforehand. I just wanted to throw that out there. you know, because I know it's gonna happen. I'm just praying to the good Lord above that I go to a screening that doesn't have that problem. Because I know it's gonna happen. But in any event, those are the appearances of Captain America, Steve Rogers, in film, all of his appearances. I'm telling you, Captain America, I don't think he's up there in the upper echelons of superheroes. When you talk of great superheroes, you hear about Batman, Superman, Spider-Man, you hear about Wolverine and the X-Men, but you never really hear about Captain America. But Captain America, you got to put some respect on his name, man. you know, he's a beast. He is an awesome character. And I remember a few years back when I started kind of deviating from the comic books, I was like, well, I guess I'm reached that age. I'm stopped reading comic books. But something happened in comics that made me go back to it. What happened was Captain America said two words on one cover that forced me to watch, to read comics again, and it was Hell Hydra, and that was like the biggest betrayal of all time. I'm like, if anybody was to flip, anybody was to turn heel in wrestling terms, I never would have suspected Captain America. And he drawed his allegiance to Hydra. And I gotta get into, I gotta read this. I gotta find out why this happened. What's going on? Well, spoiler alert, come to find out it was a clone. Uh and I was a little disappointed by that outcome, but I knew it had to be something because ain't no way that Steve Rogers was gonna flip like that. I think it was a clone. It was something like that. I don't know. I don't think it was brainwashed. I think it was a clone. I gotta reread it. I still have it. I gotta reread it. But anyways, Captain America, one of the greatest, most iconic comic book characters of all time. Are you looking forward to Captain America: Brave New World, and are you excited to see a new take on this character as Sam Wilson becomes Captain America, who is portrayed by Anthony Mackie in the films? I am excited in a sense, a little shaky with it, but I can't wait to see it nonetheless. I would love to know your feelings going forward. And also, I would like to know what did you think of Chris Evans as Captain America, Steve Rogers? Did you enjoy him as this character, and are you going to miss him as this character? Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, KB Radio Network channel, that is, and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to movie goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me as we dove into Captain America in film. I just want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.